Now, the oil prices are at an all-time high despite pulling back after reports of a possible emergency release from global reserves. Now, according to the Group of Seven, finance ministers are set to discuss a coordinated release of petroleum stockpiles with the International Energy Agency, and the talks will include the IEA chief Fatih Birol and are aimed at calming the volatile markets. Right now, Brent Crude is trading at $107.20 a barrel, still up more than 15% on the day. The US benchmark WTI crude is at $103.18, up over 14%. Earlier in the session, Brent surged as high as $119.50 a barrel as traders reacted to rising geopolitical tensions. Now, even with the pullback, oil remains sharply higher, marking the biggest single-day jump since 2020 as markets continue to price in supply risks linked to the West Asia conflict. President Donald Trump has said that the recent spike in oil price is a very small price to pay, and if it leads to the destruction of Iran's nuclear threat, then it's worth it. Posting on his social media platform Truth Social, Donald Trump argued that short-term price increases will fall quickly once the Iranian nuclear threat is eliminated. In the post, Donald Trump wrote that the temporary rise in oil prices is worth it for USA and world safety and peace, adding that only fools would think differently. Meanwhile, the conflict is disrupting global energy routes. Oil tankers are still avoiding the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical choke points for oil and gas shipments. Economists warn prices could briefly surge towards $120 a barrel, but if the conflict drags on, analysts say that crude oil could also remain elevated near $80 a barrel through mid-year, slowing global growth and pushing inflation higher. And if the crisis widens further, oil prices could climb well above $120 a barrel, raising the risks of a global recession. And to discuss this further, I'm joined by Robinder Sachdev, who's a foreign affairs expert and president of the Imagine India Institute. I'm also joined by Major General Rajan Kochar, who's a defense expert and a strategy expert as well. Well, good afternoon to both of you. Thank you so much for taking your time and joining me here at News9. I'll first go across to you, Mr. Sachdev. How do you look at the recent surge as far as oil prices are concerned, and how Donald Trump is justifying it, saying that it's only a very small price to pay? But are all the nations really in a position to bear this cost?
Well, thank you. In a very big picture, what Donald Trump is saying is something correct, but with a caveat, if there is a nuclear threat by Iran, and if that threat is eliminated, then obviously it's worth it for the longer term. We are looking at hundreds of years of our planet Earth, right? But keeping that aside, because both of those ifs I'm a little bit skeptical about, what we are seeing is that this conflict would go on in some shape or the other, unless the US is able to pull off a Venezuela-like bargain deal with whoever, someone strong personality in Iran who can be the single window clearance to whom America can convey what it wants, and that individual should be so powerful that he or she controls or dominates the Iranian military, intelligence, security, as well as the religious factions, of which chances are low. So if chances are low, then it looks like, all these attacks that they're doing, it could lead to, yes, perhaps, I think regime change is being overused, the term. A much simpler first step would be to talk about a regime collapse, right? So what could happen with these repeated attacks, by Israel and the US? The regime is getting damaged, no doubt, right? Its various infrastructures, its own credibility within the country. If the US, Israel were to pause the, attacks right now and just say that, okay, next 3 months we'll do nothing, let's wait and see. Iran could implode within itself, perhaps better, and has more chances of imploding and a regime change rather than if the US continues its bombardments, right? So whichever way, it seems that we headed for, turmoil, and talking about the energy markets, it's not only the crude oil, it's also natural gas. Yes, Trump is calling upon countries, or the G7 today are talking to meet up and see how much of the strategic reserves they should release to kind of manage the markets. But you know what? Trump, I think, is looking at one other very strategic reserve. And that strategic reserve, he's looking at the floating Russian oil, which is in the Asia Pacific, theater. They're supposed to be about 150 odd tankers of the shadow fleets, which are carrying Russian cargo, but which are not being able to offload to their buyers, right? So there are about 150 such tankers. And in these 150 such tankers, I mean, a rough estimate is that there are about 50 to 70 million barrels of oil. So that 50 to 70 million barrels is also a good, pool, which given Trump's, this thing, for example, he's telling India, okay, India, you can go buy for 30 days from Russia, right? So, and they exactly said to India that you can buy from from the stock which is floating in the seas, right? So out of those 50 million barrel, India, we may need, let's say, an extra million barrel a day. Fine, for next 20, 30 days, we get some other country. So that would also be a factor, I think. And you can almost anticipate, if this thing continues, you can almost anticipate that tomorrow or day after Trump will say this.